The motion of MEM and ZIN. In November 1973, Alan was born in Suleimania, Iraqi Kurdistan, to Gurun and Atul. His brother, Awat, was 2 years old. In Kurdish culture, meanings of first names are important, although Gurun is not definable. Atul means gold. Alan is taken from the 17th century Kurdish love story MEM AND ZIN. Awat means hope and future. Following the 1975 Algiers Agreement, in which Iran was to cease supporting the Kurds in their border disputes with Iraq, written in both Farsi and Arabic but without a Kurdish translation, many relatives and friends of Alan's family fled for the United States. Gurun refused their chance to leave Kurdistan. If I don't die protecting my country, I can never live betraying it. The Iranian government had a list of names of possible Peshmerga, suspected Kurdish dissidents. They packed the Iraqi Kurds into trucks, including 2-year-old Alan and his family, who were removed from Suleimania and sent to Samawa, 700 kilometers south. A starving dog took Alan in its jaws. His father kicked the animal and scooped up his son. A few days later, the small child went to a nearby river to quench his thirst. "Look," Gurun said, grabbing his young boy by the arm. "Over there in the river is a dead dog. It's the one that tried to kill you. Do you really want to drink the water?" After 3 months living in a hut, Alan's family was moved into a room in an old house, which they shared with others. There, his youngest brother, Awara, someone without a land, was born. Gurun always wore loose and faded trousers, a vest, and a sash he sported proudly around his waist. It is rumored that many Arabs were afraid of him and dared not look into his eyes. He knew that the Baas party spied on him because of his contact with Peshmerga. Gurun headed out one morning to buy meat from the butcher. He was strong and in good health. It is probable that he met someone along the way, or perhaps was stopped by the Baas military. When he got to the butcher's, he collapsed. A friend took him to a nearby hospital. Atul ran there as soon as she learned what had happened. By the time she arrived, Gurun was dead. Unable to speak Arabic, she cursed the Baas party in Kurdish, an action which could have seen her killed. Gurun's cause of death was not recorded by doctors. The paperwork doesn't exist. The doctors told Atul they feared for their safety should they print the truth. It is presumed Gurun was poisoned, possibly by the Baas party. Perhaps they knew of his role in the Kurdish resistance. Peshmerga Kurds had recently entered a bar and gunned down many high-profile Baas party members, and revenge killings were common. Atul was told she could do what she wanted with the body. A friend hired a car and tied the corpse to the roof, and the family drove to Atul's mother in Suleimania. In heavy rain, Awat cried, worried that his father was getting wet. He wanted him to come inside the vehicle. 14-year-old Alan took his normal 20-minute walk from his house to Roshenberg school. There were many soldiers about, which was unusual. The closer he got to school, the more soldiers appeared. Inside the grounds, military personnel ushered students through, motioning with their guns. The teenagers were stationed in a room without a teacher and ordered to wait. Soldiers entered and took the students' notebooks. 2 hours later, the school principal entered the classroom with 2 high-ranking moustached Baas party members. "This morning, on his way to school, your teacher, Abbas, was murdered." Abbas, the Arabic teacher from southern Iraq, was a member of the Baas party. He taught Kurdish students, imparting his view on the political organization and its history. A pistol always hung from his hip, and both Kurdish students and teachers feared him. Alan and his classmates were sent home. They returned to school the following day to find more military on the grounds. A soldier came into the classroom and spoke to the students in harsh Arabic, which they did not understand. They were forced to sign papers they couldn't comprehend and were officially welcomed as Ba'ath Party members. The entire school was taken to a field not far from where Abbas was killed. 3 older boys had been found guilty of murdering the teacher. In handcuffs and with their eyes covered, the trio was executed. The students were forced to clap, as were the teachers, some of whom were simultaneously weeping. Alan was watching a cartoon with his much-adored grandmother. "I don't understand this language, and neither do you. Why is this in Arabic? How come you don't pray to Allah in Kurdish? I have to pray only in Arabic," she said. "Why? Who says? That is the rule. Allah has made this rule." On the 16th of March, Alan was playing football with his friend when 20 helicopters flew above them. The boys were perplexed. The choppers dropped mustard gas on Halabja, the next town over. When Alan went to visit his aunt there a few days later, he found out that 5,000 people and animals had been killed. In 1990, Saddam Hussein sent troops into Kuwait. The US-led coalition force declared war on Iraq and the Gulf War began. Saddam lost a lot of power and many soldiers. The Kurds in the north took up the opportunity to fight the Ba'ath Party and people of Iraq. Tired of dictatorship, thousands of their enemies, however, would not fight for Saddam. They surrendered to Kurdish forces. Out of respect for their decision, the Kurds offered the soldiers food, water, and shelter. Amidst the black smoke, burnt bodies, and abandoned weapons, 17-year-old Alan felt free. This freedom lasted a month as Saddam gathered infantry, tanks, and planes and invaded Kurdistan. Without heavy weaponry, the Peshmerga had to retreat. "We must leave, Saddam's troops are coming." "We cannot defend ourselves," said Alan's uncle. Kurds left Suleimania in trucks, cars, buses, and on foot. The rain was heavy, and due to the unsealed and wonky roads, Alan's 4-day journey to the Iranian border in the back of his uncle's truck was uncomfortable. Many fleeing buses exploded after running over mines planted by the Iraqi military for the Iranian enemies. Having crossed the border, Alan and his relatives bought food from the Iranian people. Alan's uncle set up a nylon tent and the family slept on carpets inside. A few weeks later, the Kurdish parties and Saddam came to an agreement and fighting ceased. The family returned to Iraq. A distant relative who had lived in the USA for a number of years visited Suleimania in 1992. He placed his hand on Alan's shoulder. "You should be proud of your father. He stayed for the plight of the Kurds. You should be proud of your father. He left for the future of his children." In 1994, a civil war started between the two Kurdish factions, the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan and the Kurdistan Democratic Party. Thousands of Kurds were killed, not by Saddam's regime, but by each other. Alan was studying at the time. He had no hope that these two parties would ever agree. He lost faith in the idea of a free Kurdistan and declared leaving as his only option. On the 3rd of March 1997, he commenced his outward journey. Traveling south from Suleimania to Istanbul with a fake passport, at age 23, Alan left Iraq. Encountering checkpoints, he was asked questions he didn't understand. "Iraq, Iraq." Alan nodded. A Turk in a suit and Tai overheard the conversation and said to him, "Assalamu alaikum." "Wa alaikumus salam," Alan replied. As the Turk tried to continue the conversation in Arabic, Alan explained that he couldn't speak Arabic very well and that he was Kurdish. "I'm an imam," the Turk told Alan, which surprised him, for the man was wearing neither a turban nor a thobe. "I'm on my way to the village and mosque I work at." They spoke about life and politics in broken Arabic until the imam got off the bus and prayed for Alan. A youth in his late teens sitting in front of the pair overheard their conversation, turned to Alan, and after greeting him with "Assalamu alaikum," asked if he could speak English. When Alan said yes, the teen told him he was a soldier and that he was issued a leave pass every 6 months so he could visit his mother in Istanbul. Out of uniform and distanced from borders, the illegal alien and the Turkish authority bonded over a cup of black tea on the bus. At each stop, Alan tried to contact his friend in Istanbul without success. Upon arriving at the capital, the concerned soldier invited Alan to join him and his mother for dinner. Eventually, the friend arrived. Alan hugged the soldier and the pair wished each other the best of luck. Amongst a group of 20 Kurds, Alan hiked for 13 days to the Greek border and crossed illegally in the darkness. Walking through a tunnel at night, he and his party heard a train coming, not knowing how far through the tunnel they were, for it was pitch black. They made the decision to run away from the noise rather than towards it. The thought of death crossed Alan's mind many times as he ran. He eventually saw a moonlit hole begin to expand, which encouraged him to pick up speed. When he made his way out, he screamed at the others behind him to run faster. Everyone got out alive, those at the end flinging their bodies to the side of the tracks just as the train came. The group walked to Zanthe, where they spent the night. After making their way to Kavala, the party was tired and filth-ridden, which drew attention to them. Alan decided to separate from the group to increase his chances of evading the authorities and finding a new life. Now in the European Union, he travelled on a tourist ship to Bari, Italy, nervous that his papers would be checked. From there, he journeyed to Germany via Nice, France, his papers remaining unchecked once more. Alan called Awat in Leipzig. "I don't have enough money to come to you." "Go to Heidelberg. I have a friend who can help." Getting off the train, Alan had no way to contact Awat's friend and walked around the city searching for Kurds and listening out for their language. He eventually found some Kurdish people at the riverside who knew the man Alan was looking for. He worked at a nearby restaurant and purchased tickets bound for Leipzig. Alan went to a refugee center where he met people who'd lived there for years, waiting for an answer about asylum, hoping to build a better future. Given the impossibility of working or travelling and the possibility that Alan would never be granted asylum, Awat suggested Norway, which was known to help Kurds. After almost 3 months without assistance from Germany, Alan made his way to Sweden via Denmark. "Stay here," his cousin told him. "Sweden is good for Kurdish people. There's nothing in Norway." In the Swedish immigration office, Alan was asked the same questions he was asked in Germany. "Where are you from? Why did you come here?" The 4-month wait for a response that Kurds seeking asylum typically faced was well exceeded, and Alan lost his patience in month 10. "Why is it taking so long? Is it because I said nothing about being in Germany?" Yes. The immigration officer informed Alan that he should attempt to get asylum in Germany one more time. If Germany refused, Sweden would grant him asylum, though this would likely take 6 months. Alan was happy for the chance to live in Sweden. He already had work experience in a restaurant and had built a friendship group. To his surprise, Germany granted him the opportunity for asylum. He was ordered to return, which meant he would have to leave Sweden. As much as Alan originally wanted to go back to Germany, he didn't want to return to months of waiting and uncertainty. He went to Norway without a passport. A rule for refugees in the Schengen zone is that they must stay in the country where they first registered their fingerprints. To try and find a state when never having had a state meant Alan was forced to tell lies in order to find a home. Months of interviews by 3 different national governing bodies was taking its toll. "Why are you here?" the Norwegian immigration officer asked. "Because I am Kurdish." "What is your problem?" "I don't have a country. I need a personal reason. I can't speak freely. That should be a good enough reason. I expect a negative answer, so please tell me quickly." After 10 months, Alan was granted asylum in Norway. He stayed in a camp for displaced people in Bergen, provided by the Norwegian government before being relocated to the island of Stord. For 16 months, he lived with 2 men in a 1-bedroom apartment with a kitchen, television, and fridge. To relax, they played football, fished, and went swimming. They made okra in tomato puree, pilau rice, and Kurdish bread together, and encountered many different people, including other Kurds, Somalis, Albanians, and Kosovans. Alan met one guy who claimed to be a proud Kurd, yet couldn't speak Kurdish, as he was raised in an area of Turkey where the Kurdish language was illegal. Many other Kurds spoke in a dialect Alan had never come across and couldn't understand. In Turkey and northern Iraq, Kurds spoke Kurmanji, and in Alan's city and Iran, they spoke Sorani. In a Norwegian language course in 2001, Alan met a Turkish woman enrolled in his class. He didn't speak with her for the first 2 weeks because of a lack of opportunities. One day, the woman approached him. "I am Turkish. You are Kurdish. Do you hate me?" "Well, what do you think?" "You don't like me." "You're wrong. How about me? Do you hate me?" "No." "Have you met Kurdish people before? Have they said something bad to you?" "I've never met any." It's a war of politicians, not people. I agree. Alan told her his story of his bus trip through Turkey, and the pair became close. After being resettled in Bergen, Alan found integration difficult. In his world, family had been important. When one got sick, all of one's relatives visited. When one needed help, everyone helped. In Kurdistan, he had actually known his neighbors. Now he learned to eat alone. When he got sick, no one came around or even knew he was ill. He had no memories connected with Bergen. He didn't understand the language. He didn't know how long he could handle it. He had so many questions in his head. He woke up and felt as though he had lost everything. Initially friendly and caring people talked to Alan. He was welcomed in his early years, but as more outsiders came in, he found that locals became suspicious and cautious. He couldn't identify those interested in accepting him. They dressed similarly, the men with neatly trimmed beards, the women ponytails, their clothes bought at H&M. Who would be afraid or irritated? Who would be open? He found it easier to say nothing to anyone. Alan couldn't forget those out there who missed and needed him, and he felt selfish when he thought of his father, who did so much for the Kurdish people and their freedom, never stopping until he died. Living in Norway, he felt he could never defend his nation. In Kurdistan, he had no space or time alone. In Norway, he had too much. Previously, his mother wouldn't let him make his own tea. When Alan decided to leave his country, she was displeased. She knew that without a passport, the danger of fleeing could easily lead to death or lengthy incarceration, as it had to so many before him. "You can't make tea. You can't fry an egg. How will you eat?" After many years, Alan's mother, who migrated to Sweden in 2002, visited him in Norway. She ate and enjoyed food at the restaurant Alan worked in. "Mother, I have cooked for you. Do you remember what you said to me the day I left Kurdistan? That I'd die of hunger? I manage the kitchen here. These chefs work for me. This food you have eaten is my recipe." In Kurdistan, Alan had only ever known war. Until Kurds get a homeland, the wars will never cease. Roaming the streets year in year out, Alan could appreciate that although Norway wasn't home, at least it offered him peace.